A poor single dad let a strange girl stay for one night, never knowing she was the daughter of a millionaire. He hadn't planned on changing anyone's life. He just saw someone shivering in the cold rain and opened his door. He didn't ask her name. He didn't expect thanks. And he definitely never imagined this girl would turn his whole world upside down with a truth no one could have predicted. What looked like a small act of kindness became the beginning of a story about fate, choices, and a kind of love that money could never buy. That night, the town of Cedar Falls was soaked in rain. Not a wild storm, but a cold, steady drizzle, like the sky was grieving in silence. Daniel Carter walked slowly through a familiar intersection after his late shift. The dim street lamps reflected off his high-visibility work jacket, making him stand out against the quiet streets. He was headed back to his small house, where his little daughter Ava was surely fast asleep. Then something made him stop. A girl sat huddled under the awning of an old laundromat, drenched from head to toe. Her hair hung in tangled clumps, her thin jacket stuck to her like wet paper. She didn't beg, she didn't cry, she didn't even look around for help. She just sat there in silence, like someone who had gotten used to being invisible. Daniel kept his distance but called out gently, his voice just loud enough to rise above the rain. "It's late, you shouldn't be out here alone." The girl looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide, not angry, but guarded. She didn't reply. Her gaze drifted past him, back to the dark, empty street. Her shoulders trembled, one arm wrapped tightly around the other like she was holding herself together. "I don't need anyone's pity," she said, her voice cold and dry like the tail end of winter. Daniel didn't flinch. "It's not pity," he answered, simply and honestly. "I've got a place with a roof, hot water, and lights. If you need somewhere to rest till morning, there's a couch." Then, without a word, she nodded once. Not because she trusted him, not because she felt safe, just because sometimes a person needs a place to breathe, even if it's only for one night. They walked side by side without speaking. When they reached the house, Daniel opened the door and flicked on a warm yellow light. "Shoes off on the mat," he said quietly. "Takes a bit for the water to heat up, but it does." She nodded again, a little quicker this time. Daniel set a mug of hot water on the coffee table with a handwritten note beside it. "Greater than, if you need to call someone. There's a landline on the wall. Greater than, please don't open the bedroom door. My daughter's a light sleeper." The girl, her name was Jennifer, though he didn't know it, yet sat down and wrapped her hands around the cup. Warmth slowly crept into her numb fingers. A tiny house, a stranger, no questions, no judgment, just an open door. Sometimes, kindness doesn't need to be more than that. Morning light slipped softly through the curtains, gentle after a stormy night. Jennifer opened her eyes, momentarily confused. A thin blanket covered her. The cup on the table was empty now, a faint smell of something warm and homey still in the air. Everything felt unfamiliar, but not frightening. Then she remembered the sofa, the man at the door, his quiet voice telling her the couch was hers for the night. A burst of laughter rang out from behind a thin wall. A small, tinkling voice followed. "Dad, the eggs are burning." Jennifer sat up, ran a hand through her tangled hair, and followed the sound. In the tiny kitchen, a little girl of about 6 stood on a wooden chair, holding a wooden spoon like it was a magic wand. Beside her, Daniel hovered over a frying pan, caught between panic and patience. The girl spun around and spotted Jennifer. Her big eyes went even wider, then lit up like she'd just discovered a princess in her house. "Are you the princess who slept on the sofa?" she asked. Jennifer laughed, a real laugh, unexpected and free. "I guess I am." "And who are you?" she asked, crouching down. "Ava, 6.5, the girl replied proudly. "Dad said a girl got stuck in the rain, so he let you stay over. Just like a fairy tale. Only we're missing a talking cat." Daniel turned, cheeks pink from the egg disaster. "We're attempting breakfast," he said, "but we might need backup." Jennifer glanced around and said, a little shyly, "I'm not much of a cook, but I can help clean up the mess." "Good enough," Daniel said with a grin. "In this house, if nothing explodes, you're overqualified." The three of them shuffled around the small kitchen. Ava spread butter on toast, crumbs everywhere, as she hummed an off-key tune. Daniel turned, cheeks pink from the egg disaster. "We're attempting breakfast," he said, "but we might need backup." Jennifer glanced around and said, a little shyly, "I'm not much of a cook, but I can help clean up the mess." "Good enough," Daniel said with a grin. In this house, if nothing explodes, you're overqualified. The three of them shuffled around the small kitchen. Ava spread butter on toast, crumbs everywhere, as she hummed an off-key tune. "It's okay," she told Jennifer, handing her a napkin. "Dad spills stuff all the time." Jennifer looked from the little girl to Daniel. Her eyes stung for reasons she didn't quite understand. Maybe it was because she had never been part of a breakfast like this, or maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she might fit somewhere. They sat around the small wooden table. The eggs were too salty, the pancakes a bit burnt, and the orange juice was the only perfect thing, but nobody complained. Daniel chewed thoughtfully and said, in mock seriousness, "I think this might be the best breakfast all week." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "It's only Tuesday." "Exactly," he said with a wink. "The rest of the week doesn't stand a chance." Ava nodded, as if that was absolutely true. Jennifer laughed again and realized she'd laughed more that morning than she had in an entire month. In a kitchen that smelled like burnt butter and toast, with a child talking non-stop and a tired father trying his best, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Family, she realized, isn't just the place you're born into. It's the place where you're seen, heard, and given a chair at the table even when all you bring with you is a pair of rain-soaked shoulders. That afternoon, after the dishes were cleaned and the kitchen straightened, Daniel poured Jennifer a glass of water and hesitated. "I know the owner of the laundromat on Oak Street," he said. "They're short-staffed. It's nothing fancy, but if you want to try it, I can take you over." Jennifer fell quiet. She wasn't used to people offering options without strings attached. No pressure, no judgment, just a small door opening. "All right," she said softly. The laundromat sat on the corner, its paint faded, windows fogged from steam, the air heavy with the smell of detergent. The woman behind the counter gave Jennifer a quick once-over, not warm, but not unkind. "You, a friend of Daniel?" she asked. Jennifer nodded. "Grab an apron. You start now." And just like that, she did. No paperwork, hardly any questions, just mountains of towels, uniforms, and the endless hum of dryers spinning like they'd never stop. Her arms ached. Soap gnawed under her nails. Heat flushed her face. Sweat soaked into the old cotton shirt Daniel had lent her. Once upon a time, Jennifer Blake had been used to leather chairs, boardrooms, and cold, polished conversations. Here, everything smelled like work and people and life. Strangely, she didn't hate it. She was just new to it. Later, she stepped out back and leaned against the worn brick wall. The breeze slipped through a crack and cooled her damp hair. She slipped off her shoes, the only pair she had left after being robbed days before. The heels were torn, the soles thin and burning. A blister had formed on her big toe. She wanted to quit, not because she was weak, but because it was the first time in her life she was standing on her own 2 feet. The next morning, when she opened the front door and stepped onto the porch, she stopped. A pair of shoes sat there, bright white, simple, no brand new, but not flashy, and somehow exactly her size. Tucked inside the left shoe was a folded slip of paper, Daniel's neat, slanted handwriting across it. "If you have to walk, walk without pain." Jennifer stood there for a long time. The morning breeze whispered across the porch, sparrows chirped on the power lines, and in the middle of an ordinary day, the quietest gift of her life waited at her feet. No name, no explanation, just someone who had seen her. In a world where everything usually came with terms and conditions, a well-fitting pair of shoes felt like a gentle way of saying, "You deserve kindness even if you don't know how to accept it yet." That night, the wind in Cedar Falls blew colder. No rain, just a sharp chill cutting through every seam of clothing. Daniel was loading bags of clean laundry into the back of his old truck, each one folded and labeled with the names of regular customers. Jennifer stood nearby, tugging her thin coat tighter. She hadn't changed yet from work. "Are you sure you want to come?" Daniel asked as he tied down the last strap. "It's almost midnight." Jennifer nodded. "I want to see how you work, and I don't want to always be the one being helped." Daniel smiled and didn't argue. They drove through narrow, quiet streets. Streetlights stretched thin, golden lines across the dark. They stopped at a few houses, dropped off clothes, knocked softly, and moved on. No one opened the doors, but sometimes a curtain twitched and a pair of eyes peeked out. At house number 15, Daniel pointed toward the porch. "Want to try this one? It's a light load." Jennifer nodded. took the bag, and carried it to the doorstep. She set it down and turned to go back when a loud bark exploded from the backyard. A large, shaggy dog came charging toward her. The gate had been left slightly open. She had no time to react. Panic shot through her. She stumbled off the curb, twisting her ankle badly and crashing to the ground. Her palm scraped the cement, burning instantly. Daniel's footsteps pounded behind her. "Back up," he shouted at the dog. The dog stopped just short, then turned and trotted back like it had only been doing its job. Daniel was already on his knees at Jennifer's side. Panic etched across his face. "You okay?" His voice was hoarse, his hands shaking as he reached for her shoulders. Jennifer forced herself upright, swallowing the pain in her ankle. "I'm fine. Just a scrape." Daniel didn't answer. He bowed his head, pressing a hand to his forehead, breathing hard like he'd just come out of something terrifying. "I told you to wait in the truck," he muttered. "I thought I could handle it," she whispered. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. But when he turned away, she saw his shoulders tense. His anger wasn't irritation. It was fear. Fear that she'd been hurt. Fear something worse could have happened. Not out of duty. Not out of obligation. He cared. She sat there silently and said, almost to herself, "No one's ever yelled at me because they were scared I'd get hurt." Daniel turned back, his expression softer now. He didn't answer. He just opened the truck door quietly, helped her inside, and closed it gently, as if she was something fragile. As she pressed her hand against the burning scrape, her tears finally fell not from the pain, but from the realization that, for the first time, someone truly cared about her. Not because of who her father was, not because of what she could offer, just because she was herself. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the laundromat windows. Jennifer stood behind the counter, quickly folding white towels into neat stacks. There were fewer customers, which she didn't mind. Her ankle still throbbed from the fall, but that wasn't what weighed on her. Daniel hadn't said anything more about the dog, but the worry in his eyes yesterday wouldn't leave her mind. As she opened a new laundry bag from an unfamiliar customer, something shiny at the top caught her attention. A necklace, delicate and finely made. A teardrop-shaped sapphire, clear and blue, set in white gold, so thin it seemed to melt into the skin. Her chest tightened. It was her pendant, the necklace she thought she'd hidden deep in the lining of her travel bag, one of the few things she'd kept when she ran. Somehow, in the chaos, it had ended up mixed with the laundry. A low voice spoke from behind her. "That's not the kind of thing a homeless person usually carries," Daniel said. He stepped closer, his gaze moving from the necklace to her face. There was no anger, just a heavy, quiet confusion. Jennifer didn't answer immediately. She tightened her fingers around the chain, then slowly laid it on the counter. "You're right," she said softly. "It's not." Daniel waited. No pressure, no demands. "My name is Jennifer Blake," she said, unable to meet his eyes. "My dad is Richard Blake, CEO of Blake Holdings." Silence stretched between them. "Then why are you here?" he asked at last. "Because I don't want to be there anymore," she whispered. "I was tired of being watched, controlled, shaped into someone I didn't choose to be. I ran away, changed my SIM card, ditched my wallet, kept just a few things like that necklace. It was my mum's." Daniel said nothing. He just studied her, trying to reconcile the girl who'd burned pancakes, hobbled on a twisted ankle, and scrubbed towels for hours. "I wasn't trying to trick you," she added quickly. "I just didn't know when I'd feel safe enough to tell you. Holding something back is still a kind of lie," he said quietly. There was no accusation in his voice, but the disappointment stung. Before Jennifer could answer, the shop bell chimed. A man walked in wearing a leather jacket and a cap pulled low. He didn't greet them. He simply lifted his phone and snapped a photo. "Got it," he muttered. "Missing 5 days, and here she is, folding towels in a laundromat." Jennifer went pale. Daniel stepped in front of her, blocking the man's view. "Who are you?" "Just a guy paid to find her," he replied with a smirk. "Her dad wants to know where his daughter is. Pays real well for that kind of info." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Leave now." "You can't stop this," the man said as he backed toward the door, taking another shot. "A girl like her, she can't hide forever." The glass door clicked shut behind him. Jennifer collapsed onto a wooden chair and buried her face in her hands. Daniel stood frozen, not because of who she was, but because he knew that in that moment, someone had stolen the fragile sense of safety she'd just begun to feel. It rained again that evening. Not a sudden downpour, more like a steady, lingering sorrow. After the incident at the laundromat, Daniel didn't hesitate. He brought Jennifer home and told her to pack what she truly needed. Then he called next door, to an elderly neighbor with silver hair and a gentle voice, Ms. Green. She was always there when someone needed help. "Ava's staying with Ms. Green tonight," Daniel said as he pulled on his old raincoat. "She have hot chocolate and comic books. She'd be okay." Jennifer nodded, but nothing felt okay inside her. They climbed into the truck. Streetlights smeared gold lines across the wet windshield. Jennifer held her small bag tight against her chest, as if it were everything she had left. Daniel didn't tell her what to do. He just drove, hands tight on the wheel, eyes steady. But when they turned onto his street, they both froze. A sleek black car sat in front of his house, headlights cutting through the rainy dark. Two men in raincoats stood by the gate. Between them, tall and silver-haired, face lined with years of power and control, was Richard Blake. Daniel braked slowly and looked at Jennifer. "We can keep driving," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, I can't keep running." They stepped out into the rain. Daniel walked beside her, but never in front. Richard watched them approach. "So," he said, without greeting, "you finally decided to show yourself." Daniel stayed calm. "She's not an object," he said. "She wasn't hidden. She just needed space to breathe." Richard glanced at the small house, the low roof, the fogged windows. "To breathe here," he scoffed. "This place can't hold a fraction of what she's used to. What do you think you can give her? A leaky roof and burnt toast?" Jennifer lifted her head. "Dad, I used to have everything," she said quietly. "Everything except peace. You think love is something wrapped in napkins and served with charred bread." He shot back. "You don't belong here." "Maybe not," she replied, eyes shining. "But at least here, I get to be myself." Daniel stayed silent. This wasn't his fight. But when he saw her shoulders shake, he gently placed a hand on her back. "I'm here," that touch said, without words. Richard sighed impatiently. "Come home," he said. "The car is waiting. People have already seen you here. Do you really want the world thinking a Blake girl ran off to live like this?" Jennifer didn't answer immediately. She turned to Daniel instead. Her gaze softened. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling, "for not asking anything. For seeing me even when I couldn't see myself." Daniel nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Jennifer turned away and walked toward the car. No one dragged her, no one pushed, but every step was heavy. The kind you take when you're leaving something beautiful behind because you don't have the strength to keep fighting for it. Daniel stood under the small awning and watched the taillights fade in the rain. He didn't call after her. He understood that sometimes the most precious things don't leave for lack of love. They leave because love alone isn't always enough to hold them against the weight of everything else. After that night, the little house in Cedar Falls settled into a strange quiet. No more extra laughter at breakfast. No more second cup on the coffee table. No extra towel hanging in the bathroom. Daniel woke earlier than usual, made his coffee in silence, and sat by the window, staring out at the damp street, without knowing what he was waiting for. Ava didn't ask many questions. She just became quieter. She didn't sing made-up songs while she played. Every night, she turned her nightlight up a little brighter. Every morning, she lingered at the door just a little longer before going to catch the school bus. Daniel didn't tell her the whole story. He only said, sometimes people have to go, not because they don't care, but because they haven't figured out how to stay. Then the coughing started. At first it was just a small cough in the night. Then came the fever, chills, her lips pale even under 3 blankets. Daniel took her to the local clinic, thinking it was just a bad cold. But her temperature shot past 104. Her small body trembled. He scooped her up and rushed to the car, hands shaking as he turned the key. Cedar Falls Central Hospital glowed under harsh white lights. Sirens wailed. Names echoed through the halls. The sterile smell made Daniel feel like his chest was cracking open. A nurse took Ava from his arms and wheeled her toward the emergency room. Daniel stayed in the waiting area, clutching her small backpack. Inside was a worn yellow stuffed bear. A woman from the billing office walked over with a clipboard. "We need a deposit of about $6,000 to start testing and for treatment," she said. Daniel stared at her like he hadn't heard correctly. He opened his wallet and counted. A few crumpled bills, $130. "Is there any way to split it?" he asked, voice breaking. "I'll pay in installments." I'll work 2 jobs. She looked at him, not unkind, but with the tired eyes of someone who had seen this scene too many times. I'm sorry, she said. It's policy. Before Daniel could reply, another voice rang out from the end of the hallway. I'll cover it. He turned. Jennifer stood there, rain dripping from her hair, her coat soaked like she'd run through the whole town. She didn't wait for his reaction. She walked straight to the desk, pulled out her wallet, and placed a card down. Bill all treatment costs under my name, she said. Room, medication, tests, everything. The clerk looked up. Are you a relative? Jennifer glanced at Daniel, then back at the woman. I'm connected, she said softly. Not by blood, but by heart. Daniel couldn't speak. In a place that felt cold and uncaring, someone had come back. Not because she had to, not out of guilt, but because a part of her had never really left. When the doctor finally said Ava's condition had stabilized and she could go home in a few days, Daniel exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for far too long. Jennifer stayed just long enough to be sure Ava was truly out of danger. Then she quietly left for Minneapolis. The elevator to the 28th floor of her father's tower moved almost soundlessly. Jennifer's heartbeat was the only sound she was aware of. When the doors slid open, she stepped into a long hallway with marble floors that gleamed under soft ceiling lights. The air felt expensive and cold. Her father stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the city. Skyscrapers glittered in the late afternoon sun. I figured you'd come back, he said without turning. I didn't come back, Jennifer replied calmly. I came to talk. He finally turned, his eyes scanning her worn shoes, her simpler clothes, and the steady calm in her face. This little game has gone on long enough, he said. You have an entire future laid out for you, secure, respectable, and worth being proud of. Don't throw it away on a whim. Jennifer stayed where she was, not sitting, just facing him. I'm not throwing anything away, she said. I'm doing something you never let me do, choose myself. You don't understand, Richard said. Real life is not some story about love and burnt toast. You need more. You deserve more. You think I deserve this penthouse? She asked. The luxury cars, the stock shares, the cocktail parties with people who don't actually care if I'm happy. She smiled faintly. I used to think so too, but now I know what I really want. I want a place where someone makes me breakfast, even if it's simple. A place where I'm heard even when I don't say much. Her father's face flickered with something like doubt, but he didn't soften. You'll regret this, he warned. You'll get tired of not having enough, of having nothing in your hands, of no one looking at you with admiration. I had all of that already, Jennifer said, and no one ever looked at me like I was worth loving, just for being me. She took a breath. In Cedar Falls. I have that, and I'm going back. Richard studied her for a long, heavy moment. That man can't give you anything lasting, he said. He can't protect you. He already has, she answered quietly. Not with money, with presence. And that's the only protection I really need. She turned and walked away, no regret, no apology. For the first time in her life, she wasn't leaving to run from something. She was leaving to return. The morning sky over Cedar Falls was clear. Sunlight spilled over the front steps of Daniel's house. In the kitchen, he stood in a faded gray t-shirt, stirring pancake batter. On the table, a bowl of freshly washed strawberries waited. Ava sat cross-legged on a chair, carefully decorating her lunchbox with stickers. The house had drifted back into its old rhythm, but something in Daniel's eyes was still unsettled. He still glanced out the window now and then, like a man waiting for a bus he knew might never come. A knock came just as he flipped the first pancake. Soft, steady, patient. Daniel wiped his hands and went to the door. Jennifer stood there. Her hair was tied back neatly. A light jacket hugged her shoulders. She held a brown paper bag in her arms. Her eyes were rimmed red, but not from lack of sleep, just from feeling everything. For Ava, she said, holding out the bag. Blueberry muffins, real ones. No preservatives, she added with a small smile. Daniel took the bag but said nothing at first. Jennifer looked at him and spoke carefully. I'm not here to ask for a place to crash, she said. And I'm not here to say goodbye. She swallowed. I'm here to say, if there's still space not just in this house, but in your life, then I want to stay. Not just for tonight, for good. Daniel stood completely still. His heart stumbled, then settled into something stronger. He didn't know how to answer. He just stared, trying to believe she was really standing there again. Little footsteps padded down the hallway. Ava peeked around the doorway, still half asleep. Miss Jennifer said, squealed, then ran out, bare feet slapping against the floor. Jennifer knelt, opened the bag, and pulled out a muffin. I brought these because someone once told me muffins taste better when they're shared, she said. Ava threw her arms around Jennifer's neck. Are you staying forever? The little girl asked. Jennifer looked up at Daniel. This time his eyes held no hesitation. She smiled, tears gathering. Yes, she said. Forever. No fireworks, no dramatic speeches. Just a normal morning with muffins, a child's laughter, and the quietest kind of promise. I'm not leaving again. 2 months after that morning on the porch, Cedar Falls woke to the smell of fresh pastries and soft laughter. On the corner near the Central Park, a pale blue breakfast truck stood beneath the trees, its white striped awning fluttering gently. A simple wooden sign hung on the side. Carter's Corner Breakfast from the Heart. Daniel stood at the grill, flipping breakfast burritos, his eyes moving between the orders and Jennifer, who poured coffee and handed out paper cups with a smile. Ava, in a tiny striped apron, carried a basket of sun-shaped stickers to the kids, proudly announcing, "Have a great morning from the little owner." In the rain-soaked streets of Cedar Falls, Daniel Carter, a single dad, had once opened his door for a shivering stranger and offered little more than a couch and a mug of hot water. He didn't know that Jennifer was the daughter of a millionaire, running from a life of control and expectations just for a chance to be seen as herself. His simple kindness sharing burnt pancakes with Ava, leaving new shoes on the porch for her blistered feet. Standing between her and the world when she was afraid, let a bond that money and status could never replace. When Jennifer's identity came to light and her father tried to drag her back into the life she'd left, it wasn't wealth or luxury that called her home. It was the memory of a small kitchen, a little girl's laughter, and a man who had quietly chosen her long before he knew who she was. Their story is a reminder that true kindness, given with no expectation, can remake lives. It can turn strangers into family and a rainy night into the first chapter of a new home. Family, they learned, isn't inherited, it's chosen. And home isn't the biggest house with the highest view. Home is the place where love stays.